So yeah, we're recording. So Susan, welcome. Welcome all to this webinar today, Thursday, April the 5th, in preparation to your participation at CIAL show and also CPMA show. Our guest today is Susan Baka. I want to go first through some house cleaning and then I will introduce Susan. So today our presentation will take about 35 minutes and Susan will cover an overview of Canada, the Canadian business culture, how to prepare in advance to a show and how to conduct yourselves at the show in B2B meetings and what to do after the show. As I said, the presentation will take approximately 35 minutes and then we will have a Q&A period of 10 to 15 minutes where you can write your questions in the chat box and I will manage those questions for Susan in order for her to answer them. Please keep your questions up until the end of the presentation and write them down in the chat box. I make sure everybody is listening to you, Susan, so I'm going to introduce you and then I will pass the microphone to you. So Susan Baka is TFO Canada's Ontario representative based in the Greater Toronto area. She's also the president of Bay Communication and Marketing INC and has directed the launch of multiple business publications, services, and websites in the fields of trade, women in business, diversity, law, human resources, workplace health and safety, tourism and public policy. She's considered one of Canada's top authorities on entrepreneurship and small business and trade, especially for women. She writes and speaks regularly on these topics in Canada and internationally. An active leader in trade organizations and initiatives locally, nationally, and internationally, Susan was one of the founders of the first Canadian chapters of the Organization of Women in International Trade in Toronto, well known as an OWIT. Served as VP International and was part of its international board for many years. She has been honored with several international awards, including from Women in Business Enterprises and the International Alliance of Women. Wow, Susan, amazing. Really, really, we are lucky to have you here today, and I will pass you microphone to start the presentation. Let me just upload the presentation for you here.
Muchas gracias, Marisabel. It's my pleasure to present to all of you today. As you've heard from the introduction, I've specialized in working with women entrepreneurs and women exporters for many years, and I'm really passionate about sharing information to both educate and inspire women like all of you. So help you kind of grow your businesses. So today I really hope to do a little of both. And to help you prepare for your upcoming visit to Canada, as you heard, what I'm going to do is to give you a bit of an introduction about Canada for those who've never been here, and some background on our business culture, what you need to do to prepare in advance, a few tips for you on when you're at the show and in your B2B meetings, and also that all-important follow-up when you get back home. So let's get started here. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about Canada. We're the second largest country in the world, but we really inhabit a relatively small portion of it, with populations that are concentrated in the southern border. Now, to put it into perspective, Canada has a lower population, about 36 million, than the state of California, which is close to 39, close to 40 million. But we are 24 times as big as California. As you can see on the map here, the blue here is we've shown how big California would be if it was in Canada. So our lower population means that we have a lower volume of trade. So it's a good place to start exporting to North America to test the North American market. But don't think of Canada as just one big market. There are actually regional differences. And in terms of the weather, well, it really varies widely, with temperatures in Western Canada over here being much more milder than they are in Central Canada. Now, in April in Vancouver, you can expect highs around 13 degrees or so Celsius. It's often very rainy in Vancouver. In Montreal, it might be cooler, but it's less likely to be rainy. The good news is that you probably shouldn't see snow when you're here. We call this the shoulder time of the year, between winter and summer. You really never know what to expect. For example, we have snow where I am today, but we really want it. We want our spring. Anyway, check the weather before you come, because you really will never know. Okay, so who are we as a people? Well, as you may know, we're a member of the British Commonwealth. We have 2 official languages, English and French. You'll hear French mostly spoken in Montreal, but that's, not likely in Vancouver. Now, the U.S. calls itself a melting pot. Canada, we're more of a mosaic, because we do respect diversity. We don't tend to demand that different cultures try to fit in as much as the U.S. would in its melting pot kind of culture. So you do not need to play down the ethnicity of your product offering. It's going to be accepted here in many ways, because Canada has one of the highest per capita immigration rates. There have been waves of immigration here. I mean, originally there were a lot of Europeans. Now there is an influx of Asians, Filipinos, Chinese, Indians. And the urban centers like Toronto and Montreal are very diverse, less so in the countryside. The range of ethnicities, well, West Coast has a high Asian population. Midwest, lots of Ukrainians and Indigenous peoples. Ontario, where I am, has really everything. Quebec, of course, has lots of French and lots of everything else, too. Now, this multiculturalism has really had an impact on food trends in Canada. You may be aware of some or all of these things, but I thought it would be worthwhile just to go through it again. But in your research, you probably know about some of this, that we're really increasingly consumers here are very health and nutritious conscious. And the demand for ethnic condiments is also influenced by the interest in spicy flavors. Like, for example, African barbecue marinades and sauces are expected to experience increased popularity this year. As a fast-growing immigrant population in Canada, people from the Middle East bring with them their food traditions, and there's a growing demand for those same products here. Products like hummus and falafel, oriental vegetables, fruits like eggplants, okra, bitter, and even green gourd are experiencing a rapid demand and growth. And as the number of people choosing vegetarian and vegan diets continues to grow, so does their demand for plant-based products. Things like proteins like beans, soy, and nuts will continue to experience growing market demand, as well as vegetarian and vegan versions of mainstream products. Vegetable-focused offering, this continues to be influenced by consumers concerned with health, environmental sustainability, and the ethical treatment of livestock. So veggie-centric cuisine ranked among the top 10 trends in Restaurant Canada's survey last year. I think something like 2/5 of consumers say they're eating vegetarian options more than they were 2 years ago. So you can see that the increasingly multicultural nature of the Canadian population is also helping to propel this trend. Unique desserts, people want more complex and experimental flavors. Superfood beverages, they're starting to dominate. Many are made with non-dairy nut milks and come swirled with, beets and turmeric. Floral flavors, drinks and dishes with things like rose water, lavender, and elder flower are also set to increase in popularity in the coming year. And then activated charcoal. This received a lot of attention last year, but it continues to make its way into new products and applications. All right, so now that you know a little bit more about us as a people, how about our business culture? Well, one thing I want to say to you all is, don't be shy. But avoid also being too aggressive. You don't, if you're in your booth at a trade show, you don't want to leap out at visitors. But we're just a little bit more of a reserved people. So, giving a nice, firm, light handshake is good when you first meet people in Canada. Now, the world seems to know a lot about the U.S., but less about Canada. So this makes us a little bit sensitive. So, try to acknowledge something about our country. Don't just say, oh, it must be cold here all the time. Maybe you could mention instead our good-looking Prime Minister. We like him because he's very pro-women in business. And he also likes those selfies. Another thing Canadians like to talk about is the weather. So you're always safe using that as a topic of conversation. Canada is also second only to the U.S. in levels of entrepreneurial activity. So we have a lot of many small, medium-sized companies. Chances are you're going to meet many the same size as you. And one of the things you need to know is that you have to give prospective buyers here time to make decisions. Don't be overly optimistic on your timelines. We tend to be just a little bit more consultative, so we take a little bit more time to make decisions. Now, what about women in business? Well, you're going to be welcomed. That's good news. Close to half of all small businesses in Canada are actually women-owned and are growing in leaps and bounds. So you're in fact, you're going to meet female buyers as well as male buyers. Like all countries in the world, we're not 100% equal yet. Men continue to lead the top corporations, and they earn more money than most women. But having said that, your gender is definitely not going to be any kind of barrier when you come here. Now, what about the nature of the buyers? Well, they're going to be multicultural too. I mean, you'll meet Canadian ones, you'll meet immigrants with other backgrounds. For example, one of the biggest buyers for processed foods in Canada here has a Sri Lankan background, and many buyers are very entrepreneurial too. In terms of how Canadians negotiate, well, it's more about relationship building than it would be in the U.S., but less than maybe in Asia or in Latin America. We're probably, somewhere in between here. In many countries, though, building personal relationships is often necessary before any business is done. And this is where I think that you as women are really at an advantage, because as women, I think we're more natural at relationship building. But relationships building those relationships does take time. So, you can't expect deals and sales to be made overnight. Now, I mentioned to you earlier, don't not to be too aggressive, but I also want to reinforce, don't be too shy. Sometimes I think we as women, we struggle with being assertive, but you really want to take a proactive approach. Be willing to introduce yourself, show that you're confident about your products. Don't feel overwhelmed by this if you're a little bit shy by nature. I think Canadians are kind of shy too sometimes. So a very good way to build your confidence is to come prepared, and that's what I'd like to talk about now. So not only does preparing build your confidence, large events like CL and CPMA, they can be really quite overwhelming, especially if it's the first time that you're coming. So you really want to plan and optimize your time. I mean, it's really easy to lose focus and waste time if you don't have a plan. I remember going to my first big trade show in the U.S. and thinking, that I was going to see it all on my first day, and it was really just too overwhelming. So good preparation is really going to help you maximize the benefits. But you also want to be memorable. And you may have heard us saying, we have this saying, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So good preparation will help you make an impact. So how do you do that? Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do is hone your introduction, or what we call an elevator pitch. And now, if you haven't heard that expression before, it's kind of like if you were in an elevator and you only had maybe 30 seconds to tell somebody who you are, what you do. So this is something that you will use at the trade show booths, if you're ever at networking events or breaks when you meet people. So before honing your pitch, think about what it is you do, what your passion is, and what you really want potential buyers to remember about your business. You just want to make it simple and short and sweet. It should state who you are. And, if you can use a distinctive phrase or a bit of a hook, that's good. You explain in the simplest terms what you do, and you try to explain why you are the best. So this is your value proposition or your unique selling proposition. So maybe I'll just give you like a little bit of an example. Hello, my name is Marie, and I liven up meals by replacing rice with quinoa that's rich in protein and taste. And I provide stores with an easy-to-use product and restaurants with this versatile ingredient that Canadians really want now. And unlike other quinoas, I am 100% certified organic. So that's just a little bit of an example. Now, don't be afraid to practice this. You can practice this in front of your family or your best friend, or even in front of a mirror. Sometimes a mirror can be a best friend, right? Sometimes it's not. Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, a mirror is not my best friend. Okay, the other thing you need to do in advance is your homework. So what you want to do is you check the trade show, the conference trade show websites in advance, and you study the exhibitor list. And, which companies are you targeting that will be there? Identify those that best match your business, and, narrow this down to a realistic number. Do some research on them, look on their website, see what you can find out about them so that you'll be knowledgeable. Another thing that I really want to emphasize is to make sure that your own website is up to date with your clear mission and offerings and correct contact information. If it can be in French too, if possible. But, buyers are going to check your website, see that you're, a credible business. So really, it's a really key takeaway from this webinar that I want you to focus on. And also, if you're a little nervous about your language, or if you feel your English is not that good, one of the things you could consider is finding an interpreter if that would be necessary and would make you more comfortable. probably students would be a good way to find an interpreter, and you could find some help in getting a student. Okay, next, want to think about the materials you want to bring. Ladies, don't forget to bring lots of business cards. That's very important. If you have some brochures or postcards, you don't probably have to bring a lot of those, but bring some, because many people may just want you to email things afterwards. Also, bringing a laptop with your electronic presentation would be very good for your B2B meetings. Your presentation could include your plant or your manufacturing process, because that would show buyers your capability and your capacity. Now, moving to the show, I mean, the research and the preparation are very important. That's only going to bring you so far. As we've talked about, business is based on creating and maintaining the relationship. So one of the greatest values of participating in a show is access to potentially key contacts that you will meet while you are there. So you never know who you will meet or what opportunities may arise. So you aim to get as much out of the experience as possible. And one way to do this is to constantly remind yourself of your goals. As I mentioned, be strategic. Visit the booths of those you want to target. You introduce yourself succinctly with that elevator pitch that you've practiced in advance, focusing on the value that you can bring. I mean, you're really only going to have, maybe 1 minute to talk to people. If they're interested and they want to know more, you can have them come to the pavilion that I understand you will be at, or you can ask them if they want, you to email them information. So probably don't leave a lot of material with them unless they ask for it. I mean, because it can get lost in the shuffle, but do offer your business card. And then, ask if they want anything now, or if they prefer, how do they prefer to get it afterwards, after the show emailed. So you want to be respectful. You don't want to hoard their time if they're busy, if there's other people lined up at the booth. And likewise, you want to get their business card. And, make sure their name is actually listed on it, because sometimes the cards are just generic. And as a reminder to myself, when I leave a booth, I like to jot down a few key points about the conversation I had on the back of their card. And then I keep a log of that afterwards, because, you're going to be meeting so many people, and it's easy to forget the details when that's happening. And just a last point here, too, is attend a conference sessions when you have the opportunity, because those are a really good chance to learn more about the marketplace and obviously to meet new contacts. Often the presenters are going to be movers and shakers in the industry, and they could be buyers, so it's an opportunity to go up afterwards if you have a question or you want to briefly introduce yourself. I've always found that's a really good way to make contacts and to get directly to get business cards. And okay, so now this is something that I really want to reinforce too, is to go outside of your comfort zone and seek out new people. This is the whole value in coming to shows. Don't spend too much time just talking or sitting with the people you know. I often find that women will do this because sometimes we feel more comfortable this way. But how are you going to find new opportunities and meet new people if you only stay with those you know? One time I was at a big event in the U.S. and there was a big delegation of Canadian women there, and I walked into the room and they were all sitting together and there was no room at the table, and so I went and sat at a table with strangers. And I sat next to a U.S. banker, and through the course of the conversation, I told him about the kind of marketing work that I do for banks in Canada, and lo and behold, he was interested in my services. So there you go. You just never know who you will meet if you take just a little bit of a risk. All right, turning now to the B2B meeting, what you can expect from buyers. So I'm not a buyer, so I'm not a real expert, but I'm just going to try to share with you some guidelines based on what I know. You are going to have the opportunity to hear buyers in a panel when you get to Canada before the show starts. So these are the things that I'll kind of go over, like some of the questions that you could maybe expect from buyers. Well, first of all, you want to be prepared to answer questions about what is most unique about your product, that value proposition that we talked about. Obviously, your prices. Make sure that your prices are competitive for the Canadian market. I understand that there will be a market familiarization tour before the show so that you'll get a chance to see that, and you can do research in advance on that. Also, do you have any certifications from international certifying bodies? Buyers want to ensure like consistency and quality. They want to make sure that all the shipments from you are going to be consistently good, not just the first one. If you have any manufacturing facility credentials. Also, in terms of volume, they might ask you whether you will do minimum orders or only large volumes. Some buyers could ask for a small volume to test the product in the market. So you want to be open to small orders as well as large ones. Capacity. You want to be honest about this. If you can handle it, say yes. If you can't immediately, you could say, oh, I need 6 months or whatever to scale up. Just the important thing is to be honest about that. And then product details. Be prepared to articulate details like, nutritional values. That's very important now, like which vitamins or minerals your foods are rich in, or whether, there's health attributes like organic or vegan certified. This is all falls in line with our increasingly, health conscious consumers here. Some other questions, prepared with a plan on your payment terms, what are you proposing there? Exclusivity, under what conditions would you agree to it? One of the points I want to make here is, Canada is a big country. If somebody's asking you for national exclusivity, you want to make sure that they would represent a corporation that has facilities and clients across the country. Maybe it's better that they just be a regional. They have regional exclusivity, like in just one of the provinces, as long as they do have representation in the province. So to assess terms of exclusivity and to decide on that, you really need to do your due diligence on the company and check their credit also. Buyers may also ask about private label, which is a common practice for you to do in here, and it's actually a faster way to enter the market, as it can take many years to build a new brand here. And shipping and logistics, very important. I should have put this on the list of what to prepare in advance, because you want to find out all about this before coming. You want to check with a freight forwarding company at your end for the cost of freight and duties. How much is freight shipping to Halifax, Montreal, and Vancouver, which are our 3 main ports. So pick a company at your end that handles transportation and customs, and get a quote for your product delivered to those 3 ports. Also, a buyer is going to ask if there is a contact person who is English speaking, to resolve any issues afterwards. If questions might come up after shipping your goods, they're going to want to make sure that there is good and fluent communication. And then in terms of what you should ask buyers, if these things don't kind of come up in their questions, you need to ask them if the product has to be modified for the Canadian market in terms of whether that's ingredients or labeling or packaging. We've already talked about exclusivity, but if it doesn't come up, that might be something you want to discuss. And then you want to find out what, if they do, what their payment schedule is like and whether they do pay quickly. Ask them, if it doesn't come up, you can also ask them about the private label and whether they do that. Okay, so now, in your B2B meetings, factors that are going to affect prices you propose are going to be the time that buyers take to pay, whether they want a small volume or a large volume, and if you can give any discounts, and in terms of things like quality too. So take into consideration that prices proposed to wholesalers would be more negotiable, and since they're the distributors and not the retailers. The negotiation process is different for retailers like supermarkets than the wholesalers. Retailers are tougher on payment terms and on volume and on quality. So if you're small or you have an emerging brand or product, you could consider going first with a wholesaler who's going to be more flexible. And this is an easier and a safer way to enter the market, despite the fact that your profit margin may be a bit lower. Now, after the show, well, despite the best intentions, this is where many of us fall down. So be sure that you have a follow-up plan for the contacts you meet that are part of the companies that you're targeting. I have to tell you that after one show, one of our TFO reps interviewed buyers and asked, for those who didn't buy, why didn't they? And the lack of follow-up from exporters was the number one answer. So if there's only one thing that you take away from this whole webinar, remember to follow up. And there are a number of ways that you can keep connected. So after the show, when you're back home, if you promise to send something to anybody, obviously you want to do that, or just follow up with a nice to have met you note. You also want to reply promptly to any buyer questions. Even if you just acknowledge that you received their question, if you don't have time or you need some time to get information to get back to them, just acknowledge it and let them know that you will get back to them soon. That's very important. And you want to try to keep in touch. That'll make you stand out too. You could periodically pass on any information that may be valuable to the buyers and help to reinforce the relationship. And it'll help keep your company, your business top of mind. That could be, telling them about new developments in your company, or if you have new products, or if you just found out, something interesting about the industry. And it's important to be patient. I talked about the fact that Canadians' business culture needs time for decision making. It can take time to land a sale. You want to be patient, but you be persistent with that kind of follow-up and staying on their radar with regular communication that will keep your company top of mind. And also remember to stay connected with your trade office here in Canada. They're here to help you, so tell them your issues, your problems, or if you have any questions. They're a very important resource for you. Okay, so now in wrapping up, I just would like to give you a few bonus tips. I'm part of the Organization of Women in International Trade called OIT. We do have a chapter in Peru. We do have 2 chapters in Africa, in Nairobi and in South Africa. But we also have something called virtual membership. So you might want to consider virtual membership as a way to connect with women in trade around the world. And OIT offers webinars to its members, and we also have a conference coming up in Nairobi in the fall this year. Another tip is that I just got a notice recently that Restaurants Canada is going to be running a webinar on April the 18th on the top 10 food and drink trends here. This is based on a survey of top chefs. So the webinar will give really good insights into which direction the food service industry is headed and what consumers are looking for on menus. And there will also be an opportunity to ask questions. So you might want to participate in that, and I'm sure you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation with the link here. TFO Canada. Must tell you to keep in touch with us. Check our website regularly, our services for foreign suppliers. We have a lot of very good information, and you want to, read the newsletters and make sure that the information about your company in the database is current and up to date if there are any changes. And just a little tip, it's Canadians like donuts. So sometimes if you're having a meeting, you might want to take donuts, although these ones are a little bit fancy. But when you get here, you'll probably see lots of Tim Hortons stores, and they sell donuts, and they're often lined up. So here you go. Here's my contact information. I wish you the best of luck when you come to Canada. You're all awesome. I know that you're going to have a wonderful experience here, and I do hope that these tips that I've shared with you and this information will help you get a chance to do our Q&A now. And remember, one of my tips, don't be shy. So I'm going to be honest. If I can't answer your questions, we have a commitment that we'll get back to you in 48 hours with an answer. So I'll turn it back over to you, Marisa.
Sure. Thank you, Susan, for this valuable information and important tips for not only women. I think it's important for everybody, all the exporters that are coming in trade missions or visiting Canada for business purposes. So thank you so much for this great presentation. Now we can open the Q&A for Susan. As Susan said, if we don't have the answer for you guys, it's just a matter to write to Susan. Her email is on the you can see it on the presentation, and she will get back to you in 48 hours. So it's just so we do have a first one question from Cámara de Lima. Cámara de Lima would like a little bit more of explanations on payment terms. Susan.
I'm sorry, I could not hear that, Marisa Bell.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It'd be a little bit louder.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay.
Okay, so Cámara de Lima is asking if you can explain a little bit more on payment terms.
Well, I cannot tell you how to price your product. You have to do your research, and you are, as I mentioned, you're going to have the opportunity to hear buyers themselves at a panel before you come to the show. So if you've got a really specific question around payment terms, that would be a good chance to ask at that event. I mean, you've got to do your research. You got to make sure you're competitive, but you got to know if you're looking at your pricing. I mean, terms in Canada are 30 days, 60 days. I often find that smaller companies sometimes pay more quicker than larger companies. So that's something, as I don't know if I've answered what you've asked, but if I haven't, I would suggest that you ask those buyers when you have the opportunity, because every company will be a little bit different.
And just to add to your question, to that question, Susan, normally the buyers like FOB, when they talk about importing, they like the company to put everything in the port and pay everything in the port of departure. So that's one thing that is important to add. That's the pattern when they do business here, especially in the food sector. While the other companies, okay, yeah, Cancha Coto Fruit is asking, are they the same conditions for the products, fresh produce?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, Cancha Coto Fruits is the company asking that these the same conditions for the fresh produce, fresh vegetables and fruits.
What conditions? I'm not sure I understand the question.
You're talking about before pay of term and the price, terms of payment, the prices. Are they applied the same to the fresh produce sector?
I would think so, yes. Once again, you should ask that at the buyer panel.
Okay. Okay. I have a question, Susan, if I may.
Yes.
Most of the companies that are coming, sometimes it's the first time trying the Canadian market.
Right.
Okay? So it's the first time for them. There is a tendency to, as you said, to identify Canada with the United States, which is totally, they are two different markets. When you talk about slow in decision making, could you please elaborate a little bit more? How is this slow? So the companies, the exporters have the right expectation here. Okay, the slow decision making from the buyers.
Well, I think that's part of I think that's part of the relationship building. You just can't expect an immediate answer when you come here. That can take time. So that's part of what I was saying when you're doing your follow-up. You want to stay on their radars, you want to make sure that you acknowledge having met with them, and then if they're not, obviously if they've expressed an interest in your product, then there's more of a reason to have more frequent communication that way. The Americans you might know up front immediately a little bit more whether they want to or not so much here. It can take time.
Yeah, they are more conservative in that sense.
Definitely more conservative here. They want to know who you are. They want to they want to ensure that you're credible too. So that's why I was emphasizing that if you bring if you bring your electronic presentation, and if you can show your manufacturing facilities, if you've got certifications, you want to make sure that you've got a good website. All of that is going to build their confidence that you are a good, reliable supplier.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Agrigentun is typing. Let's wait for that question to come out. And maybe another tip that I don't know if you agree, but I notice a pattern, a tendency right now that instead of bringing brochures, the companies are bringing memory sticks for that elevator pitch that you talked about. Instead of leaving the buyer with a bunch of brochures, maybe all these PDF documents in a memory stick along with the business card could be good.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good point. I'm seeing more of that too. But obviously, it's a good way to. It's always good to ask what they prefer too, right? because they may just ask you to send them something later on. But as you can imagine, when buyers are at these shows, they have so many people visiting them and giving them things, and you don't want yours to get tossed in the wastebasket. So that's why it's important to ask them. Another point that I would like to make around buyers too is that they can show up at any time, right? I mean, maybe they're not in a B2B, maybe you don't have one in a B2B meeting, but they could possibly show up any time. So just to be prepared for that, right?
Yes. We have another question from the company Agrigentum. They're thanking you for this great presentation and also asking you if the majority of the buyers are men or women.
Well, I think you're going to see probably the majority will be men, but you will see women too.
Okay. And it also depends on the sector, eh?
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions from the participants? Was everything clear for you guys?
Yeah, as I think you noted, Marisabel, a lot of these tips relate to anybody that's going to a trade show, right? But I think the things that, based on my lessons learned on going to big trade shows, as a woman, is being prepared is important, and stepping outside your comfort zone. Like, to me, that is so important, to take, you're spending your time, your money to come to these shows, and you really want to get the most out of it and meet new people and meet new contacts, and not to be shy about that. That's really key, and to not get overwhelmed. So that means your preparation in terms of who you want to target when you're going around to the booths is really important. You don't need to go to every single booth. I mean, first go to the ones that you're targeting, and then if you have time, then that's you can go see the rest of the show. And another thing I've found too is sometimes, like at the it's good to go earlier in the day, and then sometimes going back at the end of the day when they're not so busy is a good time as well, right?
That's good. That's a good tip. Finca Procel is asking, what device is best to use for electronic presentations at the show? What would you recommend?
What device?
Device.
Device.
Best to use for electronic presentations.
Well, I mean, your laptop, if in your B2B meetings, I would say.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, people, of course, are increasingly mobile these days, so that's another option if a laptop is impossible, but it's hard to see on a little device, right?
Yes. Okay, so I don't see any more. Okay, I see a few. Okay, guess two. Usually, what kind of buyer there are as retail or in bulk? What kind of buyers? As they are as retail.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
It says usually what kind of buyer they are as retail or in bulk. I'm not sure if I understand this question.
Yeah, I don't really understand that question, no.
Yes, too. Could you elaborate a little bit more, or maybe you can write it in Spanish and I translate it? Okay, let's wait. We got two other companies writing a few questions. And I think everybody is getting excited now. They were kind of shy at the beginning. That's what we're looking for with women, okay?
Yes.
Okay, it takes a little longer here. Another thing that we always recommend, Susan, is they bring their own notebook and a stapler, and so they can take notes, staple the business card that the buyer they met, and make the right notes at the moment. As you pointed out, it's important to write the notes, then you don't forget about
Yes.
what you talk to the buyer, eh?
Yes, absolutely. And then when you get back home, you can kind of keep a log of everything, right?
Exactly. Okay, so we have a few questions here. Let's take it. What categories of buyers can we find in a trade show?
What categories of buyers?
Yes.
I mean, in terms of like at the CL show?
These are two. Here we have participants for CPMA and CL show.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to find all food and beverage, categories of buyers in the show. I think, like, if you look on if you look on the websites,
Yeah.
that will give you, and you look at the exhibitors list on the website, that's definitely going to tell you who's going to be there.
Buyers mostly also for those type of shops we see as distributors, medium importers that go there to those shows. The big supermarket, the big chains they buy from the distributors. So basically what we expect to buy in those shows is that the distributors and medium buyers also, normally. What is the most important topic for a product? The price, the procedence, or the benefits?
All three. I mean, if you've got a really unique product, and it's something that is in demand here, I think you'll probably garner a higher price. But, it's a delicate balancing act, isn't it?
Exactly. We have a question. This maybe that will take a little bit of time, but it's up to you. Agricolantar is asking if the prices in the market in Miami market, influence the prices in Canada, especially in fresh fruits and vegetables. I think this is one thing that maybe we can take our time.
Yeah. Yes, we would have to get back to you with an answer on that.
We get back to you. Regresamos a Agricolantar. Te enviaremos un email with these answers. City, I think that what kind of buyers we find at CL? Yeah, that's we answered that question. I think we're gonna take one more question. If anybody has one more question, if not, we close this same webinar. Okay. So I think we are fine, Susan. I don't see any more questions coming on the chat board.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, I wish everybody good luck and go do your homework now.
Yeah, and we are going to send this presentation to you guys, and we will translate this presentation also into Spanish to send it out. So in the couple of days, and thank you so much, Susan, for your time for this valuable presentation, and we keep in touch.
De nada.
Adiós, gracias.